What if letting go isn't the punishment you thought it was? What if silence isn't the thing that breaks her, but the thing that reveals what truly needs to be broken in you? You believed that going no contact would shatter her, that your absence would echo through her world and leave her chasing shadows. But here's the quiet truth most men don't want to hear. She expected it. She prepared for it. She's seen it before, because no contact might stop the noise. But it doesn't dismantle the illusion. It doesn't reclaim your peace. And it doesn't rebuild the man inside you who was never meant to beg for worth in the first place. You're here because you were all in. You gave your time, your trust, your loyalty. And when she walked away, she didn't just leave you alone. She left you questioning your value. But that wasn't a wound. That was an invitation. Not to chase her, but to finally meet the version of yourself you abandoned trying to be enough. This video isn't about revenge. It's about remembrance, not of her, but of you. The man whose silence is no longer desperation. The man whose stillness is not absence, but presence. This is about learning how to stop orbiting her story and start writing your own. If you're ready to rise not just beyond her, but beyond the version of you that needed her, then like this video, subscribe to Stoic Station, turn on notifications, and stay with us. Because what's coming next isn't just silence, it's transformation. Now, let's dive in. 1. She was just the mirror, not the meaning. You thought you loved her, but if you're honest with yourself, what you really loved was how you felt in her presence. The attention, the validation, the feeling that someone finally saw you the way you've always wanted to be seen. She mirrored back the parts of you were proud of, the dreams you held, the strength you hoped someone would recognize. You weren't just falling for her, you were falling for the version of you that came alive when she looked your way. But mirrors don't stay still. They crack, they shift. They reveal what we miss when we're too focused on being chosen. That's why when she left, what broke wasn't just the connection, it was the illusion. The illusion that she was different. That this time, it was real. That someone finally saw the real you and stayed. But maybe what hurts the most isn't that she left. It's that you handed your peace to someone who never earned it in the first place. You let her shape your worth without asking if she was even qualified to hold it. And now, in the silence, something deeper is surfacing. Not just heartbreak, but clarity. You see now, it wasn't her you were addicted to. It was the escape, the dream. The image you built in your head that let you avoid the harder truth. That part of you was still waiting for someone else to define your value. That's why this pain feels so raw, not because she broke something sacred, but because she didn't break your heart, she exposed where you had no boundaries. This is the awakening most men run from, but you're not most men anymore. You're here now, seeing the truth not through emotion, but through evolution. She wasn't your destination. She was a detour you needed to take to finally face yourself. She wasn't your forever. She was your mirror. And when mirrors crack, they don't destroy you. They reveal what you need to rebuild. 2. Detach like you mean it. No contact is often misunderstood. Men think that by blocking her, ignoring messages, or staying away physically, they've taken their power back. But the truth is, you can go silent and still be emotionally chained. You can delete her number and still check to see if she viewed your story. You can stop texting, yet live every day hoping she'll break the silence first. That's not strength. That's just quiet desperation wearing a mask of discipline. Real detachment doesn't begin with absence. It begins with emotional neutrality. When her name no longer stings. When a photo of her doesn't throw you off center. When her silence doesn't control the rhythm of your day. Until then, No contact is just a waiting game, and you're still playing it on her terms. This is where most men get stuck. They confuse stillness with healing. They think distance equals power. But she can feel it when your silence is performative. She can sense the undertone of hope. And as long as she knows you still care, even if you never say a word, she still controls you. That's the hard truth most won't admit. The wound isn't just that she left, it's that part of you still needs her attention to feel validated. But you don't rise by waiting, you rise by releasing. Detachment means you don't need to know what she's thinking. You don't need to be seen to feel solid. You don't hope for closure. You create your own by deciding she no longer holds space in your emotional world. She wanted you to feel incomplete without her. That was the power she thought she had. But true healing isn't about proving her wrong. It's about realizing you never needed her validation to begin with. Detachment is peace without explanation, silence without tension, presence without performance. And when you reach that state, not pretending but genuinely centered, that's when the shift happens. That's when you stop orbiting around her gravitational pull and return to your own axis. Not because you're cold, not because you're bitter, but because you've finally remembered what it feels like to belong fully to yourself. 3. Own the silence like a fortress. Most men fear the silence that follows a breakup. They treat it like a waiting room, something to survive until she reaches out again, until the pain fades, until the next distraction arrives. But silence isn't a punishment. It's not a void meant to be filled with noise or validation. It's a fortress, and only a few know how to live inside it without collapsing. You see, silence exposes everything. It reveals how attached you still are, how much your sense of self was tied to her presence. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the insecurities, the emotional dependencies, the unhealed wounds. That's why most men run from it. They turn to temporary fixes, scrolling, dating apps, gym selfies. But these are just emotional band-aids over deeper breaks. A man who's truly grounded doesn't fill the silence. He listens to it. He sits inside it with patience and purpose. He uses it to sharpen himself, to take inventory, to reflect, refine, rebuild. That's not weakness. That's discipline. This is where you begin to shift, not through noise, but through stillness. When the world goes quiet, you finally hear your own voice. You realize that healing doesn't require her closure, that peace doesn't need applause, and that the man you were before all of this was just the starting point. This silence isn't her doing anymore. It's yours. It's no longer the aftermath, it's the arena. And each day you choose not to react, not to reach out, not to let her memories steer your emotions. You win something back. Control, clarity, self-respect. There is power in the man who needs nothing from the person who once meant everything. Because the moment you can sit in solitude and not be consumed by it, that's the moment you rise above it all. And that's why the most dangerous transformation begins here, in silence. Because the man who sits comfortably with nothing becomes everything. She may try to provoke a reaction. She may check to see if you're still watching. But by the time she does, you'll be long gone, still, steady, and stronger than she ever expected. 4. Be the consequence, not the closure. Closure is often mistaken for a final conversation, a mutual understanding, or some neatly packaged explanation that makes the pain easier to bear. But real closure doesn't come from her, it comes from within. You don't need her to validate your experience. You don't need her to agree with your version of what happened. And you definitely don't need to send a long message hoping she'll finally understand the damage she caused. You're not here to explain, you're here to evolve. There's a quiet power in walking away without a spectacle, no last word, no emotional outburst, no "let me just say this," just stillness, just distance, just a life she no longer has access to. That's the consequence. Not because you're trying to hurt her, but because you're done offering yourself up to someone who never truly saw your worth. She may expect the old you to come running back, the one who couldn't tolerate disconnection, the one who needed answers to feel okay. But not this time. This time, you don't chase, you don't argue, you don't even try to prove your side of the story, because deep down, you know, there's nothing left to say that your absence won't say louder. She's not confused about what she lost, she's confronted by it. Your silence becomes the mirror she never wanted to look into. The decisions she made echo louder when there's no more drama to distract from them. That's what happens when you stop reacting. You become the reminder, the reflection, the reckoning. And maybe, just maybe, she'll start to realize that she didn't just lose a man. She lost the chance to grow with someone who was willing to give her everything. Because the moment you stop asking for closure is the moment you stop asking for permission to move on. You're no longer the man who waits for clarity. You are the clarity. You don't return to prove a point. You rise to become one. And as time passes and your silence deepens, what once felt like an ending becomes something far more powerful, undeniable proof that you stop reacting and start becoming the consequence. You didn't break, you transformed. 5. Silence is louder than anger. She knew how to handle your emotions. She expected the hurt, the confusion, maybe even the anger. She braced for the texts, the pleas, the outbursts, because that's what men usually do when they're wounded. They reach for noise, and noise, no matter how painful, still keeps her in control. As long as you react, she knows she still matters. But then, you didn't. You didn't lash out. You didn't chase closure. You didn't try to prove a point. You simply went quiet, not out of spite, but from a deeper decision to reclaim your energy, your focus, your peace. That's when things shifted. She expected fire. She got stillness, and it confused her. Anger she could interpret, tears she could rationalize, but silence, that unsettles her, because silence doesn't give her anything to hold on to. No confirmation, no leverage, no sign that you're still circling her emotionally. That's the difference between reacting and releasing. One keeps the cycle alive, the other ends it for good. And so she starts watching, quietly, checking your stories, glancing at your updates, waiting for something that confirms she still holds space in your world. But there's nothing there. No cryptic captions. No "look what you lost" posts. No emotional breadcrumbs to follow. Just distance. Real, undeniable distance. Because now, the life you're building isn't designed to trigger her. It's just not about her at all. And that, more than anything, begins to break down her ego. She thought she'd haunt you. Instead, she sees herself erased, not in bitterness, but in indifference. Because the truth is, what's worse than anger? Irrelevance. When your name no longer carries her weight, when your milestones don't include her memory, when you show up fully without the need to be seen by her, she feels it, not as punishment, but as absence. As a door quietly closed, not slammed. And that's when she realizes she's not even a footnote in the story you're writing now. You didn't disappear to be dramatic. You became silent to become free. 6. Let the pain build you. Pain has a way of offering you two paths, collapse or creation. You could have let this breakup define you in the worst way. You could have turned bitter, jaded, resentful. You could have made her your excuse to stop showing up for yourself. But you didn't. You chose the harder path, the one where pain doesn't become your prison, it becomes your forge. You took the silence and didn't let it crush you. You used it as space to breathe, space to confront what you ignored, Space to admit what needed to change, not just about the relationship, but about you. You didn't numb the ache, you faced it. Every lonely night, every wave of missing her, every temptation to break your progress, you stood there and felt it without flinching. And slowly, the pain began to lose its power, not because it stopped hurting, but because you started rising anyway. It's in the discipline that things begin to shift. The quiet mornings when you wake up early and move your body. The journal entries where you write your truth, not just your anger. The boundaries you finally enforce, not as punishment, but as protection. These aren't just acts of distraction, they're acts of rebirth. Because healing stopped being about getting over her the moment you realized it was never about her in the first place. It was about coming home to the man you were always meant to be, the one who doesn't need someone else's presence to define his value. And maybe that's the greatest irony of it all. She thought she was ending something. She thought she was walking away from a version of you she could replace. But she had no idea she was setting in motion the exact fire you needed to rebuild. She didn't break you. She built you. Not by design, not by care, but because you refused to let suffering be wasted. You turned every ounce of loss into fuel. You stopped performing for her and started becoming for you. And now, the man you're stepping into, he isn't hardened. He's refined, precise, solid. You didn't just heal. You rebuilt, stronger, quieter, and fully self-led. 7. Make her regret replacing the irreplaceable. At first, she thought you were like the rest. Another chapter she could close without consequence. Another man she could scroll past without hesitation. Maybe she even believed she could find someone else quickly, someone newer, louder, shinier, and maybe in those early weeks, it looked like she was right. You went silent. She moved on. Her world seemed full. Yours looked paused. But what she didn't expect was who you'd quietly become in the shadows. She didn't expect the silence to make you sharper, the absence to make you focused. She didn't expect you to use the heartbreak not as a reason to collapse, but as a reason to rise. And while she thought she'd replaced you, she didn't realize she'd never even understood who she had in the first place. The man you're becoming now doesn't chase. He doesn't compete. He doesn't broadcast his growth for validation. He simply moves differently, grounded, centered, focused, and without needing anyone to recognize it, his energy begins to speak louder than anything he could ever post or say. There's no desperation in you anymore, no hidden messages sent into the void, no subtle digs, no thirsty updates designed to provoke, just progress, just peace, just presence. And slowly the realization creeps in for her, not all at once, but in quiet moments. When your name comes up in conversation and people speak of the calm you carry now, when she sees your world expanding and realizes she's no longer part of it. When the man she thought she left behind is now someone she can't touch, even if she wanted to. She lost a once-in-a-lifetime presence, not because you shouted it, but because now she can't unsee it. She can't unfeel the weight of your absence, and she can't undo the choice she made to let go of something that no one else has quite matched since. You didn't become irreplaceable by trying to prove her wrong. You became irreplaceable by finally becoming right with yourself. 8. Build in the dark, rise in the light. Growth doesn't need an audience, and healing, real, internal, lasting healing, never asks for attention. That's why the most powerful transformation doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the quiet hours when no one is watching, no one is cheering, and no one is validating the effort. It happens when the lights are off and all you're left with is the choice to keep going or give in. You don't evolve for applause. You don't document your progress hoping she'll notice. You don't drop subtle hints or crafted captions to spark curiosity. That's not power, that's performance. And you're done performing. You do the work now because you've finally understood. Significance isn't something you're given. It's something you build from the inside out. You've stopped needing her to see your glow up. You're too busy creating a version of yourself that even you never imagined you could become. And that's where the shift truly happens. You sharpen your focus in the dark. You refine your habits when no one's praising you. You elevate your mind, your health, your discipline, not to make her regret, but to make yourself proud. You don't need her to track your progress. You just make sure it's undeniable the next time your name passes through her mind. Because the man she left behind, he was still searching, still waiting to be seen. But this new man, he doesn't look back. He doesn't linger in memory. He moves forward so far, so completely, that by the time she thinks of you again, what she remembers doesn't even match who you've become. You don't need her to see you improve. You need to become someone worth missing. And now you are. Not because you changed for her, not because you wanted her to look back, but because you finally chose yourself with such intensity. The past no longer holds any weight. You didn't rise to prove anything. You rose because the darkness gave you the space to build without ego. And in the light, you're unrecognizable. On purpose. 9. Stop reacting. Start evolving. She expected the collapse, the emotional texts, the sudden attempts to prove your worth, the late-night calls disguised as just checking in. She thought you'd fold under the weight of absence, because that's what she's seen before. That's what most men do when they're caught off guard by someone who walks away while they're still holding on. But this time was different. You didn't fall apart. You went inward. You didn't beg for another chance. You built one for yourself. You shifted your energy from chasing to creating. Instead of asking why she left, you started asking what needed to grow in her absence. And piece by piece, day by day, the man you were began to evolve into someone stronger, someone steadier, someone silent for all the right reasons. You stopped explaining. You stopped performing. You stopped needing to be understood. Because deep down you realized that evolution doesn't make announcements. It just happens. Quietly, powerfully, without warning. She may not hear from you again, but she will feel you. Not in your words, but in your absence. Not in what you post, but in what she doesn't see. Because now, every man who comes after you will be held up to the standard of a man who refused to chase, refused to react, and instead chose to rebuild. You don't chase. You don't reach out. You don't react. You just keep rising. Let her scroll through memories and wonder if she ever truly knew you. Let her compare what she now has to what she casually let go of. Because while she was expecting a version of you to break, you became someone she can no longer access. That's the power of evolution. You don't need revenge. You don't need recognition. You just keep walking and let the silence echo behind you. 10. Forgive without flinching. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. People assume it's about letting someone off the hook, softening the blow, or pretending the betrayal didn't cut deep. But real forgiveness, the kind that reshapes you, isn't about them. It's about you. It's about freeing yourself from the weight you were never meant to carry forever. You don't forgive her because what she did was acceptable. You forgive because you refuse to let it define you. You're not choosing to forget, you're choosing to release. Because resentment is a leash, and every time you replay the past, you give her a little more control. But when you let go without asking for anything in return, not closure, not an apology, not acknowledgement, you take that power back. She expected a grudge. She expected cold silence laced with tension. She expected bitterness to keep you tethered to the version of yourself she left behind. But what she didn't expect was grace, real, unshakable grace, not performative, not calculated, just a quiet, steady peace that said, "I don't need this pain anymore to remember who I am." That's the final shift, the one most never make, because it's easier to stay angry. It's easier to use the story of what happened as fuel. But the truth is, growth doesn't need anger. It needs clarity. And once you see it clearly, you no longer seek revenge, because you're too busy rising. You've changed, not for her, not in reaction to her, but in spite of everything she thought would keep you stuck. You've become stronger, more focused, more whole. And in that transformation, there's no room left for bitterness. Not because it didn't hurt, but because you outgrew the wound. You're not bitter. You're not broken. You're reborn. She may never say it out loud, but she'll feel it. That quiet, steady energy of a man who didn't just survive, but transcended. And that's what wins. Not the silence, not the distance, but the unwavering freedom of a man who has nothing to prove and no grudge to carry. You forgave, not to mend the past, but to protect your future. And you did it without flinching. Summary. This was never about hurting her. It was never about proving a point, sparking jealousy, or winning some silent battle. If that's where your energy goes, then she still owns part of you, and you've come too far to let your evolution be fueled by vengeance. This was always about remembering who you are, beneath the chaos, beneath the heartbreak, beneath the need to be chosen. It was about peeling back everything she reflected onto you and finally seeing yourself clearly. Not the man who needed her approval, not the man who waited for her to understand, but the man who realized that no one else gets to define his value. No contact was just the beginning. It was the pause you needed, the reset, but it's what you did with the silence that changed everything. You stopped reacting. You started rebuilding. You let go not just of her, but of the parts of you that once clung to her for identity. And now you move differently. You don't post for attention. You don't look over your shoulder. You're not waiting for her to wake up and realize what she lost. Because the truth is, you're not part of that story anymore. This is your chapter now. A chapter built on focus, clarity, and a deeper kind of strength. The kind that doesn't seek recognition. The kind that doesn't perform. The kind that simply becomes. You're not here to be picked. You're here to choose yourself. So carry it with calm. Let your actions speak. Let your silence echo. She may scroll. She may wonder. She may even regret. But while she seeks validation, you build a legacy. If this message stirred something real in you, if you're ready to rise, not for her, but for yourself, then like this video, subscribe to Stoic Station, and turn on notifications. And remember, she didn't lose you when she left. She lost you the moment you stopped waiting to be seen.